welcome to The Art of Conversation, a radio show dedicated to a college course dedicated to the art of conversation. This program is brought to you by the Eileen G. Jones Honors College and the Department of Communication Studies, Media, and Journalism at Commonwealth University here in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. I'm your host, Eric C. Miller, Professor of Communication Studies. This show is the official radio presence of Honors 211, The Art of Conversation, a course that focuses on the ancient art of dialectic. That is, the collaborative process by which knowledgeable peers pursue the truth through focused question and answer, back and forth, what is often called Socratic discussion. After a few weeks of wading through the theory on these matters, our students spend about 10 weeks in practice, holding twice weekly 75-minute deep dives into topics and questions of their choosing. Our theme this semester is the good life in the Great Acceleration, and all of our content falls somewhere within this intentionally wide umbrella. Each week, we're talking about how to live good lives in this era of soaring economic growth, technological innovation, labor market uncertainty, political turbulence, climate change, mass extinction, and on and on. My guests today are Peyton and Mitch, a pair of student moderators who this week asked us to think a little bit about the coming impacts of artificial intelligence. Peyton and Mitch, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Before we dive into our subject matter today, tell us a little bit about yourselves. Where are you from? What are you majoring in? What sparked your interest in AI?
My name's Mitch. I'm a freshman here at Bloomsburg. I'm from upstate PA, like right on the PA-New York border. I'm a chemistry major, and AI sparked my interest because I think it's something that I see like playing a major role in the future as technology continues to like learn from itself. I could see it becoming more and more innovative and advanced.
My name's Peyton. I'm from Northeast PA. I'm in math education major. It sparked my interest in AI. I saw school use AI in their classrooms, so just saying that pertained to my major and like my future.
So first things first then, what is artificial intelligence, and in what ways is it set to change the way that we live?
Artificial intelligence is like a form of technology that can learn from itself and think on its own without input from a human-like moderator. So I see it playing into the future because as it continues to learn on its own, it can continue to make its own decisions based on the situations that arise.
I think how we see Google being used in our everyday lives now, we see AI chat boxes and even AI results popping up everywhere. So it seems to be something that's going to be integrated into our everyday lives and not just like in big tech companies or something like that.
So we hear a lot of people talking about ChatGPT on college campuses in particular at the moment. You mentioned it also factors into search engines. When you Google something now, you get the AI summary at the top before you get the actual list of results. What other forms does AI take? Where else do we see it now, or can we expect to see it as we move forward?
Part of what we had heard from the groups of students yesterday was online like shopping websites. There was always AI like incorporated into individual websites depending on like what you were looking for, which they weren't entirely in favor of because it's just kind of, it seems overused, but it's becoming part of more than people think it is.
Our classmates also mentioned social media. Some examples were Snapchat and Instagram. And our classmates weren't really in favor of that. They were actually quite annoyed that AI was like shoved down their throats in that.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of strange, actually. I mean, Instagram has these AI chat bots that you can just talk with, and I don't quite get that. I've never really used one of those before, but it doesn't make me mad that they're there. I just don't, pay much attention to them. When people react negatively towards AI, it's usually because of something bigger and more threatening than a Google search return or a chatbot on social media. There are a lot of concerns out there now that AI is going to dramatically change the way that our labor market works, for example, by taking a lot of jobs that are currently performed by people. Do you have a sense of which jobs are most at risk?
I would guess jobs that are less physical because I think it would be harder to have AI like do physical jobs, but things like accounting or online marketing or anything that can be done in like an online workspace, I could see AI having a more prominent role in, because chances are it'd be more efficient online because that's like where it resides.
And one of our classmates even mentioned his dad, where he works, they do a lot of coding, and he mentioned that they use AI to do the coding now because it's just much quicker than having the humans do it. But I've seen AI, like I said, take over schools. So even personal jobs that we see, like nursing, teaching, stuff like that, I can see AI in the future taking over those jobs that we see as more like personal.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, it was kind of a cliche for college students coming to campus that the advice they got from their parents, from their guidance counselors was learn to code. You'd hear this expression again and again. Don't study art history. Don't study philosophy. Learn to code. That's the future. And now AI is uniquely positioned to do all the coding for itself. And so that turns out to have been maybe some not great advice. Now, we talked a little bit in class about how when people talk about AI, it tends to be inflected pretty dramatically, one way or the other, imagining either a utopian future in which AI makes our way of life much better than it is now, or a dystopian future in which it makes everything much worse. People are inclined to one or the other, more so maybe than splitting the difference and imagining a future in which AI plays some role, but not that big of one. Can you break down for us maybe what the utopian future of AI looks like versus the dystopian vision?
I would say the utopian vision is one where individuals have more time and more freedom and a better quality of life because of the presence of AI, like utilizing AI to do jobs that you don't particularly want to do, or making medical advances or things along those lines with AI to allow individuals like more time to live their lives how they want. But I see the dystopian being more like an AI takeover, as everybody kind of talks about, where they've realized that like humans are really only hindering an ideal world, and we're just used like as such.
Yeah, having grown up in the 1990s and watched movies like Terminator and The Matrix and some of these others, I think my generation was kind of primed to imagine a future in which computers and robots and technology went badly awry and eventually exterminated human beings. I'm not certain that that's the path that we're on, but I guess especially as I get older, I am more on the concerned side than the excited side. I think it's also the case that most of us don't really get this. It's a very specialized technology. We feel like we're kind of in the dark or a little bit confused about it. And so that takes the form of either hope or fear. Part of it, though, I think, is that we have to, because it's such a specialized thing, we kind of have to trust that the people who are making it are doing a good job and are being careful about these sorts of things. And I honestly don't really trust them to do that. My concern is that they're pushing this so hard because they're getting a lot of, startup capital from like venture capitalists who are investing in this. They're going to make a fortune selling it to companies that are looking to become more efficient. And those motives don't have a ton to do with ethical questions. I mean, you've read about this more maybe than I have. Do you get the sense that AI is being developed by responsible, ethical individuals who care about the impacts of this technology on our shared future?
I don't believe so. Like you were saying, these individuals are making some sort of profit off of this and they're getting funded. And at the pace that AI is being pushed out right now, I don't really think they are having the time to think about these ethical values, and they're just kind of just pushing it out.
The article that you had us read for class was very interested in the question of AI regulation and governance. It raises, I think, a very basic question, which is, first of all, can AI be governed? And if so, who is responsible for doing that governing? What are the answers to those questions?
I think governing AI is going to be really difficult because when you have something that can learn on its own and teach itself, like one of the things I saw was that in the last couple months, AI bots have written more code for themselves than the developers have. So at this point, they seem to have more of a say in what they do than like the individuals over them. So I think regulating and maintaining like certain standards with AI could get to a point where that's nearly impossible because it'll learn on its own and do what it wants.
Yeah, in the article, the question of who should be regulating AI, they like surveyed people on it. There wasn't like a clear consensus because it was based around trust. And a lot of people don't trust the government right now. So they were saying the government shouldn't regulate this. But then they also didn't have trust in the companies to regulate AI. I'm not sure. Like, I'm with the people on some level, but I think the government should have like a blanket statement of regulations that all AI needs to be held to.
Yeah, the United States is suffering from a significant trust deficit across lots of different venues right now. And in this particular one, that creates the impression for me that this train is just running as fast as it can. And they're going to push this technology as fast and as far as possible, driven by profit motive, but also I think just by the question, what all can this do? And their kind of curiosity to see what all it can do. But that brings to mind for me a line from the, was it 1994 film Jurassic Park, where the one character raises the question of, or says something to the effect of, you guys were so interested in figuring out if you could bring dinosaurs back from the dead that you never stopped to ask the question of whether you should. And to me, that seems to apply pretty cleanly to AI, or it seems, in my understanding, they want to see what it can do. And they're not as interested in the question of whether or not they should do these things. And for me, that's what makes the dystopian future seem a little more tangible than the utopian. But what would it take to realize a utopian future here? I mean, do you think it's feasible that in another decade or two, we could live in a country where machines do all the grunt work that nobody else wants to do, and the rest of us just kind of kick up our feet and enjoy our lives?
I think it could be possible. I don't know how long it would take, but I think it could be possible. I would say it depends on how it's used, because I've always viewed AI as a tool. So, like most other tools, you can use them for harm or for your own benefit. And if the consensus of the individuals in the United States seems to be to use AI for our benefit, then I could see it going well.
Yeah, I could see it going well, but I'm with you with the dystopian view more. I can see AI just splitting America even more. We have so many like polarizing things going on right now. I can see AI being something that splits the country even more, and like people who are, we want AI, and people who are like, get that out of here.
We had a conversation in class the other day about universal basic income and the possibility that the government could pay out $1,000 to every citizen every month so that they could work less and enjoy their lives more, and the implications that that policy has for Americans' somewhat conflicted relationship with the idea of work. That is, most of us don't really like working. We really value our weekends and our holidays and our breaks and our vacations. But we also feel that work has a sort of inherent moral quality to it, and that, being a hard worker indicates your value as a person. And if you're not a hard worker, if you're a lazy person, that's one of like the worst categories that you can fall into in the American mindset. And I think AI factors into this as well. One reason I think that a universal basic income might be a necessary consideration in the future is that I am very concerned that AI is going to take lots of jobs, including lots of jobs that people go to college for, which means people might not go to college as much in the future. And that means I might lose my job if AI doesn't take it directly. When you imagine a future in which lots of jobs are taken over by AI, and people have to therefore inhabit a category either of just the unfortunate unemployed or the lifetime of recreation and leisure. I mean, if we didn't have to work all the time, could we still be happy?
I think the probability, like with the UBI, I see that being beneficial as AI takes more jobs. But in terms of how happy individuals would be, I don't know. Because I know personally, there have been times where I'll go home for break and I don't work. And I'm like miserable the whole time because I feel like I'm not doing it. Like I don't have anything to do. So I feel like to an extent, work gives a lot of individuals something to do and it gives them something to be proud of. And if AI takes over that, then I don't know where they're getting that satisfaction from.
I agree with Mitch. Like, working gives people a sense of purpose, something to be proud of. But I also agree, like, I wish we had more time to do leisurely activities. But when it's, like, too much leisurely activities, at what point do you stop enjoying them? It's just, like, your everyday life. Like, the joy of leisurely activities is, it kind of comes from not being able to do them all the time.
I mean, if you look at the history of the labor movement in the United States, you can go back to a time when people worked 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, and that was just the norm. And then eventually we got an 8-hour day and then a 5-hour week. And that was kind of the trend. So maybe we have a future in which people work 4 days a week or less. And the government fills out their income with a UBI, and machines do more of the work, and people generally are happier. It's just interesting to me because I think there's so many complexities there in terms of just whether or not we can work less and still be happy, or if a certain amount of work is required for that happiness. Do you think that if you had to work less, the AI is doing all the jobs, you could find other things to do with your time that would fill the void left by not working an 8-hour, 5-day week, making furniture or writing books or taking up a musical instrument or doing something else, with your family, other sorts of maybe forms of labor that are meaningful and that can give you a purpose in life, but that don't require you to punch a clock?
I think you could find other things to take your time because, I don't know, there's definitely enough to do. It's just finding the time to do it. But if you have AI taking over more of these jobs and individuals have more time, I think people would be more likely to go out and try new hobbies and pick things up to fill their time.
Another question then that arises in my mind is if we had fewer people working and more leisure time to enjoy, would our crime rates rise as a result? They say idle hands are the devil's tools. If you have more people who are out there with plenty of time on their hands and don't need to be working quite as much, would they, instead of using that time and energy for productive pursuits, maybe they would just get into a lot of trouble?
I think individuals having more time could definitely lead to something like that, but at the same time, if they have more time to do what they want, they might be more inclined to do more things that they would rather do than go out and get into trouble.
Let's pivot then here too, because, another of our concerns within the theme of the course has to do with environmental damage. I mean, it's a big part of what we discuss here. And I know one of the concerns about AI proliferation is that it comes with a certain environmental cost. Can you explain to us how AI is environmentally damaging?
So they have to build these large boxes for the AI to live in, essentially. But just like how your computer heats up and you can feel the warmth, these big boxes are heating up whenever you put something into the chat box or whatever. So they use water to cool the machines. So they have to keep taking from a water supply that wasn't being used before. And then also yesterday in class you mentioned the electricity that these AI boxes have to use. Like, they don't shut off, so they're just constantly using the electricity. And we see more and more popping up. And with the climate change that's going on right now, where we see more droughts, less rainfall, it's hard for them to get the water that needs to be circulated.
So a big draw on electricity, also a big draw on water, and then alongside developments in things like cryptocurrency, we're creating new technologies that require a ton of energy. And we are at the same time, at the moment, curtailing new forms of renewable energy, like wind in particular. And so in order to power these AI and cryptocurrency mining operations, we end up falling back on more and more fossil fuel sources of energy, which leads to more air pollution and more carbon emissions to generate things that are, to me, kind of concerning in and of themselves. All right, so in general, as we look ahead and AI continues its relentless advance into our lives and determines the course of our future, how do you feel about that? How do you characterize your feelings as you look ahead to the job market that you will be entering, your prospects for home ownership and having a family or traveling or doing what you want to do in your adult lives?
I would like to be optimistic because I still believe the utopian society is achievable, but it is concerning with how many jobs can be taken, and then that leads to increased competition for like the jobs that humans have to do.
I think I might have been more optimistic about AI, but there's so many other things going on right now that makes it easier to have the dystopian view. I am nervous for the future too. Our other classmates had talked about social media and the effects that has on children and their mental health. And AI, like we said, is being implemented into social media. So I'm just nervous to see the effects that AI has on children and as we go into the future with their communication skills.
Certainly a wild time to be alive. I was at a conference last week where this one guy said something that really kind of stuck with me. He said that people who are alive today are the most morally sophisticated human beings ever to live in all of human history. And his reason was because every time Silicon Valley creates a new technology, the ethicists have to ask questions about its use. So things like AI, cryptocurrency, universal basic income, we have to think about those things and determine their moral value one way or another. And in that sense, the world is just so much more complicated today that there's just far more to evaluate in an ethical sense. That doesn't mean we're the most moral people in history. It just means we are the most morally sophisticated in history. And I find myself thinking about that a lot. One of the questions you posed to the class yesterday was, do you think over time your reservations about this technology will soften as you understand it more or as you see it deployed more? And it makes me wonder if maybe in another 10 years, if this recording is still available on the internet, you might go back and listen to it and be like, oh, that was so funny, how worried we were about AI. Or you might listen to it and say like, wow, our fears have been borne out. I mean, do you have any predictions to make?
I don't know about a prediction. I just think our opinions on it in the future will be decided based on how we go about it now.
I don't have any predictions. I'm hopeful that we look back on it and laugh.
Me too. Peyton and Mitch, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for having us.
You've been listening to The Art of Conversation, a radio show brought to you by the Eileen G. Jones Honors College and the Department of Communication Studies, Media, and Journalism at Commonwealth University in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. As always, I am your host, Eric C. Miller, Professor of Communication Studies. Thanks for listening, and tune in next time.